Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and I'm joined today by Phillip Sorrells. He is Vice President for Strategic Marketing at CommScope. Phillip, it's great to see you again.
Fantastic to see you too, Martha.
Well, we were both at Super Mobility Week last week, and we heard so much there about the need to add capacity to the mobile networks. In your opinion, what are some of the drivers of this?
Well, let me give you a story directly from Super Mobility. I think it'll paint the picture exactly what's driving the need for capacity. So I was lucky enough to be invited to a significant customer event, a party. Yeah, a party. Yeah, let's say a party. And at the party, there was a well-known performer that was at this performance, at this customer event. And when the performer is doing their thing, I quickly noticed that probably 70% of the people at the event, and there were probably at least 500 people at the event, 70% of them had their mobile phones in the air videoing the event as it was happening, right? So, and then as soon as that stage performance was ended, their heads went down and you could see that they were attaching that video to a text message or to a Facebook upload or to Instagram or into one of hundreds, it seems like, but dozens for sure, social media sites, etc. So in essence, the need for capacity is really driven by all these absolutely cool applications, and very specifically video applications that really consume a massive amount of data throughput, especially if there's an expectation of high performance video, which I certainly have an expectation of high performance video. So those are the types of things that are really driving demand. Consumers around the world want ubiquitous coverage. They want to have an experience with the internet that's as good in their handset as it is at their home, and just a lot of demand and expectation for those kind of performance characteristics.
Yeah, and we're hearing that it's only going to increase with the iPhone 6 and how much faster that device is. So what are some of the specific ways that operators can add this capacity?
Great question. In a very simplistic way of looking at the world, which is pretty much the way I look at things as much as I can, there's really three fundamental ways to add capacity. One, you can improve the radio spectral efficiency, the way the radio spectrum is used effectively, and that's really the radio technology. We're really fortunate today, I think, that the LTE radio technology and even the 3G radio technology that we have out today is really as good as it's ever been in the history of the world. In fact, some would say that the LTE radio technology is reaching the limits that are set by Shannon's law in terms of capacity and capacity spectral efficiency. Outstanding technology. The second way is to add more frequency bandwidth, and that's why you hear so many discussions about the AWS-3 auction that comes up in November, all the discussions about 600 megahertz and what will happen with that spectrum, the longer-term viewpoint on what will happen with 3.5 gigahertz and even 5.8 gigahertz. You know, where do we get additional spectrum that we can launch all these services through? So that's the second key area. And the third way is the oldest way and the most highly used way of adding capacity, and that's by densification. Densification means taking big cells and making them smaller, or it means taking the existing sectors that you have now and splitting those sectors into different levels of sectorization. So that technique is probably 2,000 times bigger impact than the other ones are, so it really becomes a primary motivation that you see in the operator community of where do we find more cell sites, how do we split sectors more effectively, how do we put cell sites in areas where you wouldn't have thought about that in the past, and really leads toward this whole conversation about small cells.
Yeah, and a lot of the places that operators are learning they need to put cells are these dense urban areas. What are some of the specific challenges associated with that?
Well, very particularly in dense urban cells, you have, I would say, four primary constraints. The first one is site acquisition. So if you go into a dense urban area, that's prime real estate. And the prime real estate, the people who own that real estate want it to look good. So there's a lot of zoning restrictions, a lot of guidelines about when and where and how you can do construction in those locations. So site acquisition is quite a challenge, and easily can be an 18-month and longer proposition just to get permission to put a cell site in those type of applications.
And let me just interrupt you 1 minute. Is that just to get one specific cell site, or sometimes you can negotiate for more than one at a time?
There are applications where you can negotiate for an entire cluster worth of sites, especially with the small cell ecosystem. People are going after like entire city streets of light poles and that type of thing to try to buy in advance of locations. So that's happening. So the second area is power. So once you find a site, the radio has to have power. So so you've got to somehow get power into that site, and the same with backhaul. So you also have to not only worry about the access side of that cell site, but you have to worry about backhaul. And in those applications, kind of the default thinking is fiber. And that makes a lot of sense that you would put a cell site where you have fiber, so that it makes the backhaul part of it a little bit easier to go. But a lot of cases, you'll be 10 meters away, or 30 yards away from that last fiber run, and now you're looking at digging out concrete, digging out pavement, doing that type of work, and that last 10 yards can be really hard and expensive to do if you've got to get permission from downtown Las Vegas to tear up a sidewalk to put in fiber. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. So you got to get power and you got to get backhaul. And then the last thing I think is really important is making sure the trade-offs that you have to make still result in a performance out of that cell site that justifies the pain and the cost to get it. So you go through a long acquisition process, you think all through the power and backhaul, solve all those problems. Well, you want that cell site to still give you enough performance that at the end of the day you can sit back and say, the means justifies the ends, because it does take quite a bit of going over hurdles to get those kind of cell sites. So you got to get that fourth characteristic in there. Did I really get the performance that I expected?
Okay, great. And what are some of the specific solutions that carriers are finding to meet some of these challenges?
Well, I would say that there's really 4 good, solid approaches that seem to be paying off. One is the application of small cells, pico radios, and that type of thing in the right kind of application. For example, an outdoor application or a small enterprise building that the building owner and the architecture of the building are really okay for a technology solution that maybe is a single operator type solution, or a little bit narrower application in terms of bandwidth and technology. So those are good applications for those kind of good niche applications. The second thing is a solution that I call a mini macro, and I'm just making that term up. It's not an industry term. It's just a Phillip Sorrells term. Well, I hope so. But I call it a mini macro, which is basically all the RF and radio interface and baseband interfaces that look just like a macro, but the antenna height above ground is lower, and typically you build these mini macros in a concealed tube. So it doesn't look like a cell site, a big three-leg tower. It looks like a monopole. And you can launch a lot of really good, high-quality RF using already well-known, well-proven parameters to do that kind of solution, and do it in a way that it's easier to get the site acquisition problem solved. Certainly more expensive than a micro or a small cell, a pico, or that type of radio solution because it's more power, but you also cover a bigger area, and if you have the right kind of solutions that go with that, you can have a little bit better performance. That's the kind of thing I would aim at putting, for example, in a city park where there's maybe a big concert areas or college campuses around a college campus. You can camouflage those easily, make them really look nice, and really cover a lot of pop with a pretty moderate investment. Of course, the biggest area to do densification is inside buildings. Now, as an RF guy, I look inside a building. I don't just see what's happening inside the building. I see a lot of applications for cell sites inside buildings. Of course, they're small. And, of course, we advocate the application of DAS. We think that our DAS solutions, both our I&U platform that's really aimed at large venues, stadiums, airports, high-rise buildings, it's a great application for a higher power tap application. And our new platform that we introduced in North America, our I&E platform, is really aimed more at the enterprise tap applications of medium to large size buildings where the building owner or the ecosystem would really value a solution that's multi-operator, multi-technology, and multi-frequency. Then the fourth area that I think is a really good tool that's often overlooked is work on the macro. Improve the capacity of the macro layer. I see cell sites all over the place that are facing dense urban areas, like a cell site that has one sector that's facing a road and another sector that's facing toward where maybe apartment buildings are, but the third sector is facing a shopping center. Well, that third sector could be the one sector on that cell site that's at 100% capacity. And instead of building new cell sites to solve that problem, you could take that sector, split that sector, double the capacity, or use a technology like our new 5-beam antenna technology on that really hot sector and just split that one hot sector into 2 or into 5 and really work on optimizing the capacity of your existing asset, your macro layer, to see if you can get more economic life out of that investment. So I think those are 4 really kind of good attack plans for adding capacity in those ecosystems.
Yeah, 4 very good pieces of advice. All right, Phillip Sorrells, anything else that you'd like to share about adding capacity to the network?
Well, certainly every time we add capacity, we all need to keep in mind that LTE is an interference-limited technology, right? So it's important as you apply and add all these technologies to the network that you just keep in mind that it is an interference-limited system. And everywhere that you have a chance to reduce and take out interference, the payback is fast. It's a great payback. We really promote 3 things in that area of interference reduction, interference management. One is the application of antenna technology that we call sector sculpting. It's really looking at how the antenna energy comes out of the antenna and really puts the energy only where you want to cover, nowhere else. And we have a lot of different things in our portfolio that really add to that. The second thing is what we call interference mitigation filters, which are specialty filters that we can custom design so that if an operator has a very specific transmit and receive band interference case, we can carve that interfere right out. Another great way to make just a really fast improvement in the interference floor. And then the third thing is passive intermods. We have worked for at least 15 years to try to establish ourselves with the knowledge base to claim some expertise in passive intermods, and have multiple programs that we've rolled out over the year about passive intermod suppression, equipment testing, certification, dynamic testing, active testing. The big area that I'm particularly interested in now is environmental testing, environmental conditions for passive intermod. And last week in Vegas, we rolled out our new line of 160 passive products for in-building coverage. The in-building ecosystem previously had been seen as kind of a low-power system where passive intermods weren't as big of a concern as they are, but now you have a lot more power going into buildings. You have a lot more density of cell sites, of sectors, and a lot more frequencies coming into buildings. So all those PIM concerns now really need to be paid attention to, and our new line of high performance passives we think will be a great assistance for the industry.
All right, well, we will keep an eye on it. Phillip Sorrells, Vice President of Strategic Marketing at CommScope for Wireless. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.